before you plan a ceramics project, be sure that your personnel at your school have checked the electrical connections between the kiln and the electricity source, and the ventilation in the classroom, so that you know that your kiln is in good working order. You could also invite a representative from the company that sold the kiln to you. They're willing often to come out and just look at what you've got and help you figure out how to fire it because you may not have a scut. Mm-hmm. Both of these are scut. Yeah. So you may not have a scut kiln. You may have another type of kiln, or you might have the same types, but they may be slightly different. So so you want to be sure that you have investigated the safety of the physical location, the electric source, and and make sure your kiln is in good working order, because you may have to put in new coils. You may need new fire brick, other issues. Mm-hmm. Okay? So safety first, right, and then art.
Yes.
I got another thing I need to add. In case like you're in a hurry and you need to open it up real quick, do not open it if the temperature inside the kiln is above 452 degrees. If it's above that, then thermal shock can set in and all your pieces can explode. Once it's lower than 450, it's okay, but it's still, I wouldn't recommend picking it up.
Mm-hmm. So. Good call.
Yeah. Basically, there are two types of electric kilns. There's manual and digital. They're both really simple to work. There's basically a schedule of how to fire it. I'll let you copy it, and I'll give you a copy as well. Right. And it's really simple, and it is very flexible. Stuff like that. Like the example is like on ramp 1, you want to hold at a certain temperature for at least 4 hours. But if the work is really thicker, then you can hold it up for like up to an entire day.
Okay.
For most cases, you probably will only hold it up for 8 hours, however. And the same with the second ramp. You also want its temperature to hold for at least 4 hours. But again, depending on the thickness of the piece or how wet it is, you can increase it as well.
And this is while your stuff's in there?
Yeah, this is while
warming it up?
Yeah, this is both warming it up and firing. And the reason the first two ramps are, you have to fire them the slowest, is because that's when things are most likely to explode. And a lot of people will say that the explosion is due to air pockets in the ceramic piece. That isn't necessarily true. That's just the easiest way to explain it. More or less, it's just the water and the clay getting into those pockets, and then all that steam is trying to find a way to escape, and it'll just go the path of least resistance. Mm-hmm. And another thing you have to be aware of, basically, is also on ramp 4. You need to slow it down also a little bit more, because at that point, basically a thing happens called quartz inversion, where basically inside of clay is mostly silica, and quartz is silica. Basically a quartz inversion. This happens when alpha quartz, which are kind of like this, turns into beta quartz, which basically means they just flip. And it's just because of heat. I don't know why heat does that, I just know heat does it. And then eventually it'll flip back around. And that could also cause some explosion. And also during the time you can see an odd growth and shrinkage of the work, but it's only like 0.3%, so not enough to really matter. But clay by itself, depending on the type, can shrink anywhere between 8% total to 20%.
Sorry, I missed that.
Alright, I'll show you how to do a digital one first.
Okay.
Alright. First thing you want to do, make sure that it is stopped. Right? So it passes. The next thing you want to do, well, you can do it two ways. You can either cone fire, and you can use slow, medium, or fast. I don't necessarily recommend you do that unless you're firing pieces that are already glazed, in which case just use medium. You could probably get away with fast, but medium just to be safe. To get started, basically, I would always use, cone fire. Stop. Wait, why isn't this working? Stop. Enter. And now it's stopped.
Oh, yeah.
Alright, user. Depending on the program, you can choose whatever user you want. Usually I just use user 6 because no one else uses it, so I don't have to worry about messing up anyone's pre-programmed stuff in there. And then, so hit enter. Segments 5. I always do 5 segments. And again, this is for bisking. If you're doing it for glaze fire, you can do less. Enter RA1 ramp. And for the first ramp, no more than 100 degrees per hour, which is what that is saying. And I want to go no higher than 180, but for the sake, let's go 150 degrees. Hit enter, hold. Again, let's say this is elementary school students. They usually have really thicker stuff, so I'm going to hold for 8 hours, which that is 8 seconds. That's 8 hours. Kind of like microwave. Enter. Okay, now they're talking about ramp 2. Ramp 2, you can go to 150. For simplicity's sake, let's just go back to 100 degrees.
So you don't have to come back like after 4 hours every time you can go ahead and program.
On a
this
digital,
before.
no. On a manual, yes. I'll show you that in a little bit. Fahrenheit, again, I don't want this to go above 200 degrees, but 180 just to be safe. Enter. Hold 2. I want to hold this for 4 hours. Ramp 3. Ramp 3, we can move up to 150 degrees. And I don't want to go above 800 degrees. And at this point, all the water has already been evaporated from the clay, and quartz inversion isn't going to happen yet, so we don't have to have a hold. The next one, ramp 4, I don't want it again to go above 100 degrees an hour due to quartz inversion, and I don't want it to go above 1100 degrees. And you don't have to have a hold. And ramp 5, you can really just shoot it off at this point because you're just finishing it. 250 degrees. Yeah. And I don't want to go above 1753. Hit enter. Hold. I don't need to hold for any hours. The alarm is something that's up to you. We use alarm 9999 because it doesn't actually send anything. You can actually program these to send a signal to your phone. I don't know how to do that. I don't even know we have to where these can do that even.
Okay.
So I just always hit 999, hit enter, and stop. And then it's always good to review everything. So user 6, segments 5, ramp 1, 100 degrees to 150 degrees, hold for 8 hours. Ramp 2, 100 degrees to 180, hold for 4 hours. Ramp 3, 150 degrees to 800 degrees, no hold. Ramp 4, 100 degrees to 1100, no hold. Ramp 5, 250 to 750, and no hold. And then,
So it's 1750, the cone.
yeah, that's a cone 08.
Oh, wait.
You can go higher, you can go lower. Cone 08 is just kind of like the standard temperature you want it, and
Okay.
it's a heck of a lot cheaper than
Okay.
going to like cone 10 or something like that. Then just hit start. It'll say on. I like to listen for it to click before I move on, just to be safe. Like right now, it's not clicking. There it goes.
There, I heard it.
Yeah. And to stop it, just stop. This is a manual kiln. This is a particularly small one. They can be just the same size as the other one that the digital I just showed. And this one, you do have to come back to periodically to switch the dials. Basically, the way you load it is you take this little thing called a cone, and what cones do is they measure heat work. So you can't just throw a piece of pottery into a kiln and crank it up to 700 degrees and hope it's going to be done in a few hours. It's kind of like cooking a turkey. You have to slowly do it, otherwise it'll just explode. I don't think a real turkey would, but I hope not. Anyway, so we get these cones, and they're fairly cheap. You can get, they're in a box of like 100, you can get them for like $5. Basically, you push this into place, under here, push this down, you want to hold it, And while that is down, you want to put this plyometric cone into here and then let go of the thing I was holding down. And it's in. You want to make sure all the settings are off before you start it off. And you want to make sure that you move the time dial all the way up over. Although typically you don't need no more than 10 hours for a good cone 08 disc.
Okay.
And then you simply push the button. And that's how you start it. Just like that kiln, depending on how the thickness of the pieces and how wet they are, varies how often you change these. So say at the very beginning, you're going to put the very bottom one on low versus the very top one, because heat rises, and so the heat will get up here eventually. And you say you want to leave this on this setting for elementary school students, probably 6 to 8 hours. And then the next time you want to come up and flip that one, and then within 4 hours, I would just move it all the way over to 3, and then the same amount of hours, 3, and then eventually move 5 to 5.
But odds. Okay.
Yeah, and then the high, and the high.
Okay.
And if you want to stop it, you can move the dial all the way over to 0, and it'll do it for you.
Okay.
In case like you never need emergency stop or whatnot.
Or the cone would reach temperature.
Yeah.
That little switch would.
Yeah,
come
if
off,
the
right?
cone, when it reaches the temperature, this cone bends, similar to this. And when it bends, it'll also flip the switch.